All right, today we're going to dive into one of the most fundamental ideas in all of quantum mechanics, operators. Now, I know that word sounds pretty abstract, but stick with me. By the end of this, you're going to have this powerful new way to think about the very act of measurement in the quantum world. So let's jump right in. I absolutely love this little exchange. It just gets right to the point, doesn't it? Quantum mechanics, it isn't intuitive for anyone. Seriously, our brains, they just weren't built to work on that scale. We're talking about a completely alien landscape here. So we all have this quantum blind spot. We can't really feel or see quantum stuff the way we can, say, feel gravity pulling us down or the warmth of a fire. But here's where we got clever. We developed a kind of substitute for our missing senses, and that substitute is abstract mathematics. And that is the absolute key right there. Math isn't just some hurdle you have to get over. No, it's the very language that lets us build a whole new kind of intuition. It's like getting a new set of eyes to see a world that has been totally invisible to us. And today, we're going to learn a few words in that language. Okay, so to get started, we really need to meet the two main characters in our quantum story. On one side, we've got the state, and on the other, the observable. Pretty much everything that happens in quantum mechanics is all about the interaction between these two. So first up, we have the state. The easiest way to think about the state is, it's the quantum thing itself. An electron, a photon, whatever we're looking at. It's the complete description of that system at one single moment in time. And mathematically, we represent this thing as a vector, which is really just a list of numbers that tells us everything we need to know about. Okay, so if the state is the thing, then the observable is what we do to the thing. It represents an act of measurement. It's us asking a question, like, hey, where are you? Or how much energy do you have right now? And the mathematical tool we use to represent that action, well, that's what we call an operator. Now, that word, operator, I know it can sound a little intimidating and, frankly, a bit dry. So, let's borrow a brilliant analogy from the famous physicist John Wheeler. He said we should think of an operator as a machine, a measurement machine. It's a really simple idea. Just picture a machine. It's got an input slot where you put something in, and an output slot where something new comes out. It's basically a transformer. It changes what you give it. And this breaks down exactly how it works. So first, the input. We take our quantum state, let's call it state A, and we feed it into the machine. Now, you'll see this weird notation with the line in the bracket. It's called a ket. It's just how physicists write it down. Second, the process. The machine itself, our operator M, does its thing. It acts on the state. And finally, the output. A totally new, transformed state, which we'll call B, pops out the other side. So the operator M took state A and turned it into state B. Simple as that. But hold on a second. This can't be just any old machine. To be a proper quantum operator, and specifically what we call a linear operator, it has to follow a few very strict but actually very logical rules. And these rules are super important because they make sure our measurements are consistent and actually make sense in the real world. Let's break these rules down. First off, the machine can't jam. Every single input has to give you one and only one unique output. Simple. The second rule is about scaling. See that equation in the middle? All it means is that if you multiply your input state by some number, say you double it, then the output is just doubled too. It keeps things proportional. And third, the machine knows how to add. The last equation shows that if you put in a combination of two states, the machine is smart enough to just process each one on its own and then add the results together at the end. This is absolutely crucial for dealing with quantum superposition. And those simple rules are what make an operator linear. Okay, so this whole machine analogy is a fantastic way to think about what an operator does. It's a great mental picture. But how do physicists actually write down the blueprints for this machine? How do they sit down and actually calculate things with it? Right, this is the big question. How do we go from this cool, abstract idea to something we can actually write on a piece of paper and compute with? We need something concrete. And the answer to that question is a matrix. A matrix is really just a square grid of numbers. That's it. But that grid of numbers contains all of the specific, detailed instructions for how our operator machine transforms any state you feed into it. So take a look at this. Each one of these little numbers, what we call a matrix element, is a very precise instruction. And altogether, they form the complete blueprint for our operator M. But, and this is a big but, this blueprint is always drawn from a particular point of view, like a specific set of coordinate axes. Physicists call this point of view a basis. And this is where it all comes together so beautifully. That abstract idea of an operator acting on a state, it just becomes a concrete calculation. You multiply the matrix, our operator's blueprint, by that column of numbers that represents our input state A, and what do you get? A new column of numbers that represents the output state B. To get that very first output number, beta 1, you just combine the first row of the matrix with the input column, m11 times alpha 1 plus m12 times alpha 2, and so on. See? It's just arithmetic. So this leads us to a really important trade-off. The huge advantage of using a matrix is that it gives us explicit, concrete rules we can actually calculate with. But the disadvantage? The specific numbers inside your matrix depend completely on your point of view, on that basis you chose. If you change your point of view, all the numbers in the matrix change, even though the underlying operator, that abstract machine itself, is still exactly the same. And that leaves us with a really fascinating final thought to chew on. We've seen that the operator is the true measurement machine, and a matrix is just the blueprint drawn from one specific angle. So, if every matrix is just a different perspective, a different shadow, what does the real underlying object that we're looking at actually look like? Well, that is a deep question right at the heart of quantum mechanics, and it's a perfect place for us to end today. I hope this gives you a powerful new way to think about the quantum world. You know, in math, we have these incredible machines that can take a vector, do something to it, and spit out a whole new one. But it turns out some vectors are special. They have this really unique relationship with the machines that transform them. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see what makes them so important in, well, pretty much everything from quantum physics to how your favorite streaming service works. So let's start with a big question. Imagine you've got a vector and you feed it into one of these mathematical machines, what we call a linear operator. What actually comes out on the other side? That's really the core mystery we're diving into today. So this machine, this linear operator, really only has one job. It takes a vector as input, and it gives you a new vector as output. And it does this based on a specific set of rules, which are usually laid out in a matrix. Now, most of the time, the vector that pops out of this thing is completely different. It's not just a little longer or a little shorter. Nope, it's usually pointing in a totally new direction. The operator has twisted it or maybe flipped it around entirely. Okay, check this out. It's like a tale of two vectors. On the left, you see a typical vector. It goes in, and something totally different comes out, pointing off in some new direction. But look at the right. That's our special vector. It goes into the very same machine, but the output vector points in the exact same direction. All that's changed is its length. It just got stretched. So let's really focus on these oddball vectors. These are the ones that, for whatever reason, resist being turned by the machine. They just hold their ground, you know? They maintain their original direction. And that's what's so cool about them, because by staying put, they actually reveal something fundamental about the machine itself. And these special vectors, they have a name, of course. They're called eigenvectors. The name actually comes from German, where eigen means something like own or characteristic. So you can literally think of them as the characteristic vectors of a machine. They define its most stable, fundamental directions. This right here, this simple, elegant little equation, is the secret code that explains this whole thing. It just says that when the machine, m, acts on its special eigenvector, the result is the exact same vector, just multiplied by some plain old number, which we're calling lambda. Let's break that code down real quick. M is our machine, right? The matrix doing the transformation. The ket vector is our special input, the eigenvector. And that little lambda symbol, that's just a number. It's the scaling factor that tells us exactly how much the vector got stretched or shrunk. So let's talk about that scaling factor for a second, because that number is just as important as the vector. It tells us the magnitude of the machine's effect along that special direction. Did it get twice as long? Did it shrink by half? Or maybe even flip around completely? That little number holds the answer. And you probably guessed it, that scaling factor has a name too. It's the eigenvalue. Every single eigenvalue has a matching eigenvalue. They're a pair, a team. The eigenvalue gives you the stable direction, and the eigenvalue tells you what happens along that direction. All right, enough theory, right? Let's get our hands dirty with a real example. Here's our machine, M. It's a simple 2x2 matrix. We've got 1 and 2 in the top row and 2 and 1 in the bottom. So let's feed a vector into this thing and see what happens. Okay, let's walk through it. We take our machine, M, and we're going to multiply it by this input vector, 1, 1. So we do the matrix multiplication. The top entry is going to be 1 times 1 plus 2 times 1. That's 3.
And the bottom entry is 2 times 1 plus 1 times 1, which is also 3. So the vector that comes out is 3, 3.
And there it is. Look at that. The output vector, 3, 3, is just our original input vector, 1, 1, but multiplied by the number 3. The direction didn't change at all. So for the eigenvector 1, 1, its partner eigenvalue is 3. Simple as that. But here's the really cool part. A single machine can have more than one of these special vectors. For this exact same matrix M, the vector 1, -1 is also an eigenvector. But when you put that one through the machine, it gets multiplied by -1. So a system can have multiple stable directions, each with its own scaling factor. So far, all our numbers have been pretty straightforward, right? But here's where things get really interesting. Eigenvalues and eigenvectors can also involve complex numbers, which, believe it or not, opens up a whole new world, especially in fields like quantum mechanics. Let's look at a machine that gives us a taste of this. All right, I've got a challenge for you. This one comes straight from the source material. Our new machine is the matrix with 0, -1 on top and 1, 0 on the bottom. We're told that the vector 1, I is an eigenvector. So, can you figure out its eigenvalue? Go on, hit pause and give it a shot. So did you get it? The answer is -I. Yeah, an imaginary number. When you multiply that matrix by the vector, you get the vector -I1. Now that might not immediately look like a scaled version of the original, but check this out. Remember that the number 1 is the same as -I times I. So if you factor out a -I from -I1, you're left with our original vector, 1I. Pretty cool, huh? And just a quick note, everything we've talked about today isn't just limited to these column vectors or ket vectors. This whole fundamental idea of a machine, a special vector, and a scaling factor, it applies all over the place in mathematics, which is why it's such a powerful concept to understand.